A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
While at supper with his disciples, Jesus was troubled in spirit and declared, "I tell you most solemnly, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at one another, wondering which he meant. The disciples Jesus loved was reclining next to Jesus. Simon Peter signed to him and said, "Ask who it is he means." So leaning back on Jesus' breast, he said, "Who is it, Lord?" "It is the one," replied Jesus, "to whom I give the piece of bread that I shall dip in the dish." He dipped the piece of bread and gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. At that instant, after Judas had taken the bread, Satan entered him. Jesus then said, "What you are going to do quickly." None of the others at table understood the reason he said this. Since Judas had charge of the common fund, some of them thought Jesus was telling him, "Buy what we need for the festival," or telling him to give something to the poor. As soon as Judas had taken the piece of bread, he went out. Night had fallen. When he had gone, Jesus said, "Now has the Son of Man been glorified, and in him God has been glorified. If God has been glorified in him, God will in turn glorify him in himself, and will glorify him very soon. My little children, I shall not be with you much longer. You will look for me, and as I told the Jews, where I am going, you cannot come." Simon Peter said, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus replied, "Where I am going, you cannot follow me now. You will follow me later." Peter said to him, "Why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." "Lay down your life for me," answered Jesus. "I tell you most solemnly, before the cock crows, you will have disowned me 3 times. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So, my dear brothers and sisters, during this time, a lot of parishes are very busy, or the priests are busy now because of the high number of people who are going for confession in the parishes in preparation for Easter. And all because on Easter it is one of the laws of the church is that if you are not to receive Holy Communion throughout the year, you make sure you receive it during the Easter period on Easter Sunday. That's one of the laws of the church, that we receive Holy Communion at least once on Easter Sunday. And so people are all preparing for this because it's very symbolic that as we celebrate the resurrection, we are also celebrating the newness of our lives. And that is why this time is about the Easter eggs, egg being a symbol of new life, new beginning. And so we are preparing for Easter, and we are preparing to receive Holy Communion on Easter Sunday, a symbol of newness in our lives. But at the same time, the Gospel is stressing something about this. And when I was contemplating on this Gospel, the spirit what I felt was fright. I did not feel like good or bad, but I was frightened. Why? Because it says a lot. There are a lot of things we could talk about in this Gospel, but I just single out the aspect of the betrayal of Judas, and the kind of imagery that John uses in this Gospel, that Jesus dips the bread and gives to Judas. It's really symbolic of the Eucharist, dipping and then giving to Judas. And Judas betrays Jesus, okay, and still receives that which is consecrated. And I felt a spirit of pride because we as Catholics, really, we do not really value the Eucharist again. And many people, especially when you go to funerals, you find that kind of situation where people just come for Holy Communion and you doubt if really they really prepare themselves for this. And it happens amongst us as Catholics that we just really go for Holy Communion without really examining ourselves. And I just felt that image, like, we can become like Judas in the way we betray Jesus when we receive Holy Communion unworthily. And it says that when Judas had received this, it was supposed to be a sign of a blessing, because this is a common meal they are having. John does not have, in his Gospel, does not have the narrative of the Last Supper, but this is what he has in John's Gospel, chapter 13, of the we call it the Passion, the Last Supper in its own way, because after that there is the washing of the feet. So it is that scenario of the Last Supper, and it's supposed to be a meal that is going to make them better or make them good, but it becomes a meal of betrayal. And it could actually become a meal of betrayal, especially the Eucharist can become a meal of betrayal, especially when we don't receive the Eucharist not that we are ever worthy, but prepared. We are prepared to receive Jesus in the Eucharist. And it's something that we must take into our hearts. St. Paul picks up this story, this theme in his letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, from verse 17, and he says that this meal should really be to make us better and not to make us worse. And from verse 27, he says that those who receive the Eucharist without examining themselves could be receiving a curse upon their lives. And in verse 30, he says that many of you have become sick and many are even dying because of this. So it really frightens me. And again, like I said, the images that John uses in this Gospel, that Judas, after he receives this, the devil enters into him. And then when he leaves, it was night. So it is a symbol of darkness. He leaves Christ and he enters into the dark. And that is why I say it's a very frightful thing when I read about this. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, as we prepare for Easter, it is a time also to remind ourselves of the blessings and the gifts that Jesus has given us, especially the gift of his own body that we receive daily in the Eucharist. And that is why the Church has given us also, Jesus himself instituted in John's Gospel chapter 20, after his resurrection, the sacrament of confession. And therefore the sacrament of confession and the sacrament of the Eucharist, they have to go hand in hand, that we must be ready for this. That before we go to receive Holy Communion, we must truly examine ourselves. Otherwise, we might make ourselves, instead of getting better, to get worse. Instead of receiving a blessing, we receive a curse. My dear brothers and sisters, let us therefore always examine ourselves, that we may not be betraying Jesus through the reception of his own body and blood. This is a time of reconciliation. This is a time of getting ourselves ready to receive Jesus in a special way, who has come that we might have life and have it to the full. We must be ready for this. We must be ready for that gift. We must be like the 11 others who were prepared to receive this great gift that Jesus was prepared to give them, the gift of his own body and blood. Therefore, as we prepare for Easter, let us prepare our bodies, let us prepare our souls, let us prepare our spirits, that everything that we are going to receive on that day, even as we sing the great song of Hallelujah on Easter Sunday, that we will truly say that we have now been born again, we have now become new beings, we have become a new creation. Amen.